listening to the Battle Ready podcast. My name is Aaron McManus, and I'm here with my dad, Erwin Raphael McManus.
I'm back.
I'm back. It's good to have you. It's good to see you.
I'm so excited. I missed Battle Ready. I miss our whole crew out there across the world. And I miss talking to you and having these fun ramblings. I missed Austin, although I see him all the time. But I just miss
You
our
see
Battle
me
Ready
all the
environment.
time. I
That's
saw you
true.
before this episode. We had coffee
That's
this
right.
morning.
I'm not able to miss you. I see you all the time. I miss Mariah.
Yeah, I know. I'm here with her dog. I've been house sitting for Mariah while she's away on tour. And
I want to say, Mariah's on tour right now with Jake Goss and Laney. They went to the Arkansas game, so I am repping Arkansas, who just won this past weekend. So it's kind of awesome. And one of the few times you'll ever see me wearing a Razorback jersey, but that's because I'm a good father-in-law.
You are, but we're a Chapel Hill, North Carolina fans. We are baby blue.
Carolina I'm a Tar Heel, Carolina blue guy forever and ever.
Okay, so a lot has happened since we've been away. So I think there's a lot to address. There's a lot to get into. But first things first, we have been trying to figure out what we're going to do with the art of communication. And, we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people go through this program, go through this coursework, which I think has been really incredible. And the feedback's been amazing. So that's been special. And we were talking the last couple of weeks on what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We get a lot of people who reach out and go, I want to buy it, but I also want the Q&As. I want to be a part of the Q&As. Because we said hey, the 10 hours of Q&As we've done, they're up there. You can get them for free. Not for free. It's a part of the package, but essentially it's bonus content. But we decided to do this. We decided to do a second round of Art of Communication. We are doing a new intake. We're doing a second round. And you have come up with, so essentially it's Art of Communication Part 2 / self-discovery.
It was sort of a spontaneous thing that I initiated around my birthday. I said, August is my birthday month. And so as my birthday present, I'm going to do something special for everyone who joins up with Art of Communication. And we're going to have another live Q&A session. Maybe we're going to do 3-4 weeks.
I think 4 to 6 weeks. We're going to do 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh, we're being very generous.
10 was too long. 10 is too many weeks.
Well, I mean, there are people who were with us the whole 10 weeks and they would have just kept right on going. So I'm not sure if it was too long for those who stayed with us for 10 weeks. And I had a great time. I love the interaction. I love the Q&A. I love getting to feel as if it's not just a relationship with a customer, but you actually have a community that you are developing together. You're growing together. You're learning about each other. You're really able to help people in a more significant way. And out of that, there have been several things that have just percolated in the environment. So we are starting a school of communication for those who do not want simply to access a seminar or a masterclass on communication, but really want to make developing their communication skill a lifelong learning experience. And so we're going to open up this world.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. No, I think it's really special. I think what we learned in the first round of Art of Communication was one, people are hungry to grow, hungry to learn, hungry for accountability and community around the Art of Communication. And not just our program and our coursework that you created that we got to be a part of, but around this idea of to be a great communicator, you have to understand not just how to communicate, but the way you should communicate and also learning your strengths and your weaknesses inside of communication. Okay, my favorite part of the Art of Communication was the Facebook groups. So we created this private access Facebook group. For 10 weeks, we were in there interacting, responding, commenting. But the thing that's wild is that it really almost didn't involve us at all. It was this incredible community where people are just keeping each other accountable. How did you guys use the first part of the Art of Communication in this week's message or in this week's business meeting or in this sales pitch? And people were giving up their feedback, giving up their insights. This kind of really beautiful, natural thing happened. And that's the part that I think we wanted to harness in this second round, is not just the new content you're creating that you're kind of adding as an additional module, because this isn't just the same content, right?
No, it's very different.
It's very different, but I think it's a great attachment to the first round.
Well, it's not a change of philosophy. It's actually just building on the philosophy and adding nuances based on the needs of the people who've been interacting with us for the past year.
And as we were creating this content, this really feels more like a prologue to me. It feels like the thing you need before the art of communication, which is messed up of us. But it came, but it's designed and kind of built around the concepts that we learned inside of the art of communication with the interaction of the crew that did it in the first round.
Yeah, but if George Lucas can do it with Star Wars, we're all right to do prequels.
Yeah.
I mean, you can come out a decade later going, that was really the middle. That wasn't the beginning.
Right. So, but building the skill of communication, essentially, we're going to keep that private Facebook group going after the 4 to 6 weeks of Q&As that we're going to build around the second module, which is really exciting. So, go.
No. I just, for me, it's really exciting because you have two different aspects, I think, that will really be focused on. One is helping everyone make incremental changes, incremental improvements. And so there'll be sort of a developer kind of concept in it where if we can just help you improve by 5%, if we can help you improve by 3%, by 10%, it's going to have an exponential effect on your ability to communicate. But also we're going to have a maximizer kind of mentality as well, where we're going to help the good get better, but we're going to have those who are really, really exceptional become great. And I think that's a part of what's exciting for me is that at first, getting better when you're bad is actually in many ways easier because we can fix some really bad things and get you just a little bit better. But as you get really good at something, now you're thin slicing. Now you're looking at the nuances that move you from being good to being great. And I think this kind of environment, the School of Communication, is going to allow us to do both of those.
I'm really excited about it. One, I'm excited because what we did in that 10th week on the Q&As is basically we were like throwing people into the hot seat the entire time. Me and Austin, and I think it was Brooke and Tess, were Googling the different speakers that were inside of the Zoom chat and pulling clips and like in the moment being like, hey, by the way, we're about to use one of your sales pitch ideas or your sermon prep YouTube moment. And we're going to put it up and the whole class, like a few hundred, is going to watch this moment and my dad's going to break it down. Do you accept? And every one of them were like, oh no, century. It was interesting because we asked a lot of people to submit moments where they've been speaking so we can kind of break it down and put it into like this arena, this art of communication arena where you break it down, rip it to shreds. And everyone sent their best moments. And I'm like, no, you don't learn from those moments. I mean, you do learn from those moments, but you learn from the worst ones too. But
well, you do learn from someone's best moment when it's not as good as they thought.
So anyways, enough of that. That's gonna release September 29th. Hopefully.
Yes,
September 29th.
very, very excited.
And
we're gonna be filming some additional content this week that's gonna come out hopefully before the end of the year.
Yeah. No. That stuff's gonna come out September 29th.
Is it really?
Yeah, the stuff you're filming this week is coming out September 29th.
Austin, are you gonna be sleeping at all for the next few weeks?
Austin's gonna be sleeping. He'll be fine. You want to talk a little bit about? I mean, one, we've been going on this for a minute, but I think this is just an exciting update. This update is going to be episode's going to have a lot of updates of kind of everything we've been working on and doing. Also, we're going to get into Game of Thrones, House of Dragons, Lord of the Rings. We're going to get into Biden. We're going to get into
All or Nothing.
The heat wave. We're going to get into All or Nothing.
Yeah,
the Amazon special we got into about the Premier League soccer. What else are we going to talk about?
Yeah. Who knows? And by the way, this is not an infomercial, but it is really about the most exciting thing that we're doing right now. And if I'm not talking about the art of communication, I don't know why anyone should be talking about it. It is so important and so critical. But I just finished my next book and I sent it to the publisher. And I think my mind just kept racing and racing and racing. And a few nights ago, I couldn't sleep all night. In fact, I started sending you some thoughts, maybe 11 o'clock at night, midnight. I kept writing all night long. 5 in the morning, my wife Kim gets up, and I'm already awake, and she touches me. She goes, "You're soaking wet." And I said, "I can't explain it. I've been having like this epiphany all night long. I've just been writing and writing and downloading things, and I haven't slept at all." I guess some people need, I can't pronounce it, is ayahuasca, and to get into like a transcendental state. I don't need that. I just sort of go there on my own, and sleep deprivation becomes a part of it. And throughout the night, I just kept seeing these different frequencies. I kept thinking about how human beings think, interact, connect, communicate at different frequencies, and how sometimes you meet someone, and it's almost as if you're in this at the same frequency, even though you've never known each other. There's an immediate resonance, and then there's other people where you're talking and you're talking, but your frequencies never connect, and you're just desperate to get out of the conversation. Have you ever been in that one? And it's not that they're not likable or that you're not likable. You're just not connecting. You're just on the same wavelength. And even when you're married, is like there's times in your marriage when you're on the same frequency, and it's like this really extraordinary connection between two people. And then other times you're living with a stranger, and it's almost like you're on completely different frequencies. And you say something, she misunderstands you. She says something, you take an offense, and you completely misunderstand what she's saying.
Where are
Austin,
you going with this?
What I'm going through is that
Where are you going with this?
Is that communication has different frequencies, and communicators, whether they realize it or not, connect to an audience based on the frequencies that they're speaking at and the frequencies that the audiences are listening at. So I've come up with the 7 communication frequencies, and these are 7 different frequencies that communicators
I like that.
speak from. And it's not like a personality indicator. It's not like,
no, it is. It is. You're saying it's not, but it is. It 100% is. It is.
Well,
I'm looking at it in my phone.
No, let me tell you
I'm closing my phone. It is.
Where it is it helps you understand the frequency from which you communicate most naturally. It helps you know your starting point from the frequency you actually emit, whether you consciously realize it or not, and the audience that will connect to you. But it's also not limited. It's not bound. Because like when you study the Myers-Briggs, if you're an ISTJ, you're pretty much always an ISTJ. Or if you use the Enneagram, if you're a 7, you're always a 7. And but the difference here is that you can actually acquire different levels of frequencies as a communicator. And as you grow and develop as a communicator, you have access to all 7 frequencies. And that to me is when you become a world-class communicator. And so it helps you know where to start. It lets you know who you are. It helps you self-identify, but it also lets you know what other frequencies are closest to you that you can begin to access in your communication competency and your skill. And I mean, ideally, you want to communicate at such a multiple level of frequencies where the whole audience is connecting to you in your talk.
Okay. So this non-personality breakdown is really a personality breakdown in which you discover the frequencies that are you're most attuned to, but also with the awakening and the self-discovery of what you need to bring into your repertoire, which I think is amazing, because the Art of Calm, the original, like the module 1, and this is module 2, self-discovery. But the first one is really about you understanding the elements in which you need to speak from. Talking about, passion and movement and helping people have an aha moment, and how to construct these ideas that not just take the room with you, but also connect and understand and fill them with inspiration, but also educate them and teach them and build them. And so this, I think, really does take these 7 communication frequencies, really do take the 5 elements and kind of harness them and embracing the 5 elements and going, okay, this is where you're naturally leaning, and how do you adjust and build onto it so you're not just a singular communicator. I don't listen to a lot of messages, but I listened to one that you sent, that not, you didn't send it to me, but the Global Leadership Summit sent it to me. I listened to a couple of messages. I'm speechless at how awful they were, to be honest. And I really like the Global Leadership Summit people. I really do. And not everyone was bad. but the preachers were bad. They were bad. Like people that I've heard do amazing were bad. And it's not a knock on them and who they are as a people, but it feels like the frequency that I think maybe the church has been speaking at is a little tired. And we were talking about this because it's not a knock on them, but even Gary Vee, like you look at the business world, he's making a huge pivot in his communication style. Have you noticed this, Austin? He's shifted from like, well, no, it isn't about things. It's about rest. It's about making sure you spend time with your family. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if it's because he went through divorce and he's going through all this personal stuff, or if it's because he sees like the Jay Shettys and he sees this kind of almost like this very like Sabbath, what is it, Catholic, the Portland guys doing this very Sabbath day, no phone, full family life, and bringing that and instilling that into his communication style. And it feels like a huge 180 from a lot of these guys' perspective of like get profit. So I think this is really necessary. But can we jump into the next thing?
Yeah, sure. Let's go. Yeah, I'm just going to say one of the shifts I see with Gary Vee is
we're not going to switch to the next thing.
Well, moving from hustle to happiness is kind of like one of the shifts. Moving from consumerism to like contentment, and so I do see these shifts, and then and moving from having these Red Bull high octane moments to these more reflective, human, authentic moments. I think it's a really interesting thing that I see him going through.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there's a huge shift. I think, I often, because I said that one thing about John Mark Comer's book, what is it, The Ruthless Elimination of Hustle. It was not a knock on him. I really like him as a speaker. I think he's really, as you're breaking down your seven communication frequencies, I think he's really a professor. He really wants to inspire you through the knowledge he's acquired and wants to hand off to you, which I think is really cool. But he lives in Portland, so there's no hustle up there, bro. No, unless you work at Nike. No, but I do think this like elimination of hurry and hustle and really finding rest, it is important, but how you rest is important. Like for the last couple of weeks, we haven't been doing this, but I don't feel like we've been resting. I feel like you just wrote a book. I just read through your book a few times, and you just came up with this, and I've been going through this a few times. We're working on the next collection that we got to fly out to New York and finish or start, and talking with graphic designer, talking with Austin, talking with all these people. Austin was gone for a week and a half, and that's probably the more rest I got. I think it's time to you just finished a book, Dad.
I did. I just sent it to the publisher. I'm excited about it. Of course, it takes an entire year from the moment you send it to them to the moment it actually ends up in the bookstores or on Amazon. So
it's just
right now it's ridiculous. It's such an ancient process, right?
It's crazy.
It doesn't match the time frame in which people are expecting or need things in our present world.
Yeah, it's waiting. They wait way too long. Like they wait way too long. But with that, we'll pretend like we just came up with the idea in 2023 September when it comes out. Okay, so I read your book. It's phenomenal. Chapters 1, 3, 6, and 7 are my favorite. I'm not going into why, because I can't reveal what you're talking about, but I really like the way you break it down. Okay. Game of Thrones, House of Dragons. What do you think?
Versus Lord of the Rings.
No, first was the Game of Thrones.
Well, with Game of Thrones, I remember the first time it came out, I stopped watching it because it just like, there's just so much like.
No. We're talking about the new one, House of Dragons.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's almost like every episode 1 of a Game of Thrones has to have pornography, and it has to have, some really like intensely sexual scene.
Was there sex in that one? In the House of Dragons episode?
Yeah,
who had sex?
You just have to fast forward it. It's like,
did you watch Austin?
Yeah, I did.
No, be more specific about the question.
What do you mean? Was there a bunch of sex?
Yeah, he was in like a full-on brothel, like multiple times.
Yeah. No, I clicked the little next 30 seconds or next 10 seconds thing until I see no more sex.
I will say it's probably a show that will make you never want to have an intimate relationship in the rest of your life because it's not like compelling. But I will say story-wise, I thought it was pretty phenomenal.
The first episode.
The character, the first episode, the characters are amazing. I don't know all their names yet. But girl who plays the lead, Renee, she's amazing. And I just really thought it was maybe a better first episode than the original, which is really hard to do.
I don't know. The first episode of the original was a bloodbath.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But it took me a while to get through the first one. So
okay. So if you were gonna choose, did you also watch the new Lord of the Rings?
I tried multiple times and I kept falling asleep. And
I watched
that to me is and what'd you think?
I'm such a big fan of Lord of the Rings.
Me too.
Such a big fan. I'm a big fan of the books. I'm a big fan of the movies, even The Hobbit. Even as boring as The Hobbit was, I still loved it. And this series doesn't have it. It doesn't have it. It's cool though. I mean, it's so interesting. Like, I love that they're exploring Middle Earth. I love that they're exploring and kind of giving you more of a background of the elves. It doesn't have it. They spent a lot of money on it and it doesn't have it. I'm going to watch it to the end because it's Lord of the Rings and it has that kind of that name brand. You know, this is my childhood. It's like, you know, you grow up reading these books and it's so crazy to me that I wasn't allowed to read and watch Harry Potter, but I was allowed to read The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings series. That stuff is way darker. Way darker.
It's funny. It is so true. And I mean, I'm a Tolkien fan. I love Tolkien. And I think it's kind of funny because I guess for a lot of Christians, you can have really dark evil because, you know, as a Christian, you believe in evil, but you can't have warlocks and witches who are good because Christians are against like witchcraft. So, you know, The Hobbit was, Lord of the Rings, yes. Harry Potter, no. But in the end, you have to realize Harry Potter wouldn't exist without Lord of the Rings.
I don't think Game of Thrones would exist without Lord of the Rings. Game of Thrones, Game of Thrones is like a medieval NC-17 X-rated version of Lord of the Rings. Yeah,
and maybe, you know, I mean, I'm not sure what the philosophy was behind Lord of the Rings. I hope I hope it picks up. I hope it finds its way. But character development is really the key. To me, it's not even, you know, it's not dragons. It's you know, it's not the animation. It's not even in some ways the universe. Are you developing characters that we resonate with and we connect to, and they feel real and we care about their life, and we don't want to see them harmed, and we want to see, you know, their longings fulfilled. And it always to me ends up coming down to the writing. And do the writers seem to own the reality of these characters, of this universe, of this reality?
So there's a lot of controversy with both Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings, because you have two series where I don't think there was a lot of diversity written into the actual books. But in both of the shows, you have I think it's the Valerians, who are black with white hair in Game of Thrones, and you have a young black elf. Well, I guess he's actually probably quite old because the elves don't age. And he's young black, and he is a part of the elven community in Lord of the Rings. And there's a ton of backlash. It's all over TikTok, all over Instagram. People who are like purists are saying, you know, what, you can't add race post the book coming out. And then there's always people going like, don't be racist, be, you know, racially sensitive, be more diverse, be open-minded. There could have been black elves, and there could have been black Valerians in Game of Thrones. I mean, at the end of the day, this just the books aren't real. The books are real. The stories aren't real. So how do you feel about this kind of like, you know, I don't feel like it's an over diversification of the characters, but I do feel it is like a racially inclusive way of building the storylines. What do you think of it? Is it weird?
Well, you know, it's funny because you mentioned that. I think of Bridgerton, where, you know, you have all the black characters in a very British white world. And
right.
And so
I want to see some El Salvadorian representation in there, some shorties in there.
I'm available. I'm SAG, guys.
Are you SAG?
I am SAG. Yeah.
Screen Actors Guild. Go get it, Poppy. You go ride some horses in Bridgerton.
Yeah. You know what? And what comes out to me is, do the actors bring a level of authenticity to their part where you're no longer thinking about them as white or black or Asian or, is it Sanderson that had the actor from Crazy Rich Asians, and he does. And he does a great job. And so, first of all, everybody's saying you need to be a purist. I mean, what is an orc? Like,
And,
I'm going,
well,
look, they're not real.
They're not real. Not real.
And what is real is a diverse world. I mean, the world of Tolkien wasn't a diverse world, and so I'm like, hey, rewriting is supposed to make sure that the original text is relevant to the moment in which it's being experienced. So I'm for diversifying a film. I don't think it diminishes it. I don't think it makes it unpure. As long as you're working with the writer's intent. I think if Tolkien had written it today, it would have been incredibly diverse. And I think it's just reflective of the time in the world and the experience that he had.
I have no problem with it. It's funny in Bridgerton because Bridgerton, this is the thing. It feels, it's a modern take on an old style.
Yeah.
Right. And so it does feel a little weird in certain aspects of like the BBC world where it's very Jane Austen, old British. It's not, does it still remain an accurate depiction of the text?
No.
When you add diversity.
No, Bridgerton is a contemporary story pretending to be in ancient times. Even the value systems, the POV, the way they saw reality, the monologues are not reflective of that time in history, and they're reflective of this time in history. And we just understand that.
Yeah, what I do find is interesting though is the same people who have a problem with this are the same people who actually think the people in the Bible were white. Like, what are you talking about? Like that's just freaking stupid. Like, you think Jesus had long, flowy hair? Like, that's just, no, he probably had some nappy hair for sure, or at least some curls. My man was looking not like Salt Lake City.
Yeah. Hey, how do you think I feel? I mean, as a Latin, we have so few heroes, and every time I'd see Zorro, he'd be a guy from England.
And yet they have no problem casting what's his name? James Franco? Is it
he's gonna play Fidel Castro?
What the actual garbage crap is that?
Well, because there are no good Latin actors in the world, and so you have to go to find some guy from England or the US or Australia.
Go find someone from England. Go find somebody. Don't put James Franco.
Yeah, but it's funny.
Fidel Castro. Are you kidding me?
I remember a decade ago when it is Henry Cavill? He's British, right?
Henry Cavill, yeah, the worst Superman of all time.
And people love him. I mean, they're looking at moving him over into the Marvel universe, right?
Are they?
Yeah. And here's the thing: is like I remember when they started hiring British actors and Australian actors to play American characters, and and then it was kind of funny going, wow, you have to go to England and Australia to find really great actors to play these roles. And they had to learn American accents, which is kind of hilarious. I guess Wolverine's technically Canadian, by the way. Wolverine he was the first like really Canadian superhero because they had to figure out how to grow the Canadian audience.
I knew there was something weird about him.
So Hugh Jackman, who's an Aussie, is playing a Canadian who everyone thinks is an American.
Okay, but anyway,
I guess that's a part of acting. Part of acting.
But you feel good about the diversity.
I feel great about diversity. I think we have to keep asking the question: is the story for everyone that we're creating it for right now. You're not creating this film or this series for someone in the 1800s. You're making this film for people who live in this time in history, and that's why it's important.
So we need some Salvadorians in Black Panther then.
And
I think
right?
For sure, there'd be a lot of little people running around.
Hey, I'm 5'11". Come on.
You're about the only tall Salvadorian from El Salvador. There's some little people.
Yes, that's true. I'm the giant.
Anyways, but we do well in the jungles, though. That's all I'm saying. Give us some machetes and let King T'Challa. Is it T'Challa?
T'Challa.
T'Challa. King T'Challa's little sister can make us some wild suits. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So I think Game of Thrones, House of Dragons, over Lord of the Rings, hands down. But I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna keep watching it. While Austin was away, I also got into All or Nothing on Amazon Prime, which is a Premier League, and this is getting into like what we want to talk about. Premier League soccer. So Premier League football, and it is like the Hard Knocks of the UK. And
yeah, I am already addicted. I mean, Aaron, you turned me on to All or Nothing. I started with Arsenal and then switched over to Man City.
Yeah.
Finished that entire series and went back and finished Arsenal.
Yep.
And one, I love it. It's just so well done. And I think it's going to do for soccer or football what F1 has done, because a part of the reason Americans have such a hard time with certain sports is because we don't have any story that brings us into that sport. And, ABC Sports, which it shows you my age, they understood this. And when I was growing up, and so you would tell the stories of the players, and so you knew what Joe Namath's story was, or Butkus' story was, or they told the story of the players, and I think it's
you like the show or what?
I love the show, but the reason I love the show is I think the coaching is at an elite level that you rarely see in any sport. In fact, it may be the highest level of coaching in any sport in the world.
You realize how one, intelligent you have to be, two, motivational you have to be, three, relatable you have to be, and we went and I've been watching All or Nothing all week. Watched Arsenal, I switched over and watched Man City, and it's really interesting because I watched Arsenal first, but Man City was the earlier season, and Man City's assistant coach was Arsenal's head coach in the next season. So that was kind of cool. So you're watching Mikel Arteta, underneath Pep Guardiola at Man City. So you kind of watch this whole thing happen. You watch, what is his name? Mikel? Yeah, you watch Mikel kind of learn all these things under Pep, and then you watch him with Arsenal going, okay, you're kind of like Pep, but you're a little different, but you're kind of trying to carve out your own coaching style. And we were learning, I thought I learned a lot about coaching, learned a lot about inspiration, how to relate to a team, how to build relationships with the team. But one of the things, we went to an LAFC game last night, they do not play the same. Pep's whole thing is playing the beautiful, courageous game of football. And then you go over to LAFC and I'm like, those are my guys. I love LAFC, but it is not the same.
No, it's not the same yet. And yet it will become that level at some point. But what really struck me, and I think this is a meaningful conversation, is that those elite coaches are really almost like sports psychologists. It's not just that they know the X's and the O's. It's not just that they're really good at strategy and tactics. They understand how to communicate to each individual player. They understand what makes a player tick. They know what kind of culture and environment they need to create. They know what elevates an individual and elevates a team. They war against individualism and actually move people toward a level of communal success that is very difficult to achieve with world level talent. And I think if you want to learn how to coach people and how to optimize human potential, watching these series is really, really helpful.
Okay. So I started watching the Arsenal one a few days before I told you, maybe like a week before I told you to start watching All or Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I started watching it and realizing kind of the dynamic of the Arsenal team, these young guys who are, I think, all under the age of 25. They're like 20 to 23 years old, all the main starters, which is pretty wild. It's a pretty young rookie team. I mean, these kids have been pro since they were 8 years old. They've been in the academies and they grow up in these clubs and these school systems, playing professional football every single day of their young lives, getting poached and traded to different teams and getting cuts and drafted. And then you get to this like 20, 21-year-old mindset and you realize what Mikel Arteta has to do as a manager is like not only teach these guys how to have like a strong, resilient mindset, but also how to like build and develop relationships and friendships on this team when guys are getting traded left and right and getting brought in and sent away. And how do you, and then I watched Man City and I texted you immediately. It was like, hey, actually watch Man City first because it gives you a lot of the backstory of like what Mikel is going to go into with Arsenal, with this like really kind of this great mixture of veterans who've been with Man City for 10 years when they were terrible and then watching them become the top club in the whole world for the last like few years to then going into this really, really young team. And the first thing that I noticed was that Man City knew how to have fun.
Yes.
And in the first episode, there's a lot of this like insecurity in Arsenal. And not that they're an insecure team, they're young, they're trying to figure it out. They don't know their routines. They're looking to the coaches a lot. They're looking to like the leadership on the team, but there really isn't anyone who's vocal. You go over to Man City, first step, people are laughing, people are joking, people are jumping on the chairs, like screaming and excited. And there isn't this like nervousness. There's this exceptional, courageous amount of confidence and joy. And this continual reminder from Pep that you are the greatest team in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Even when they lose, I just want to remind you guys, you're the greatest team in the world. You're the best players that have ever existed. And I was learning so much more from, I think, his coaching style, that he has this almost invasive joy when he comes into the locker room.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a reminder that people become what you call out of them. They will live up to your expectations or live down to them. And which is why I think this series is actually important if you're aspiring to be a high level leader. And there are occasions where you see this in American sports, where you see like a Steve Kerr or Pop or a Phil Jackson, coaches who elevate to a whole different level. But you have to realize that, in fact, I just watched this clip with Nick Saban, and he said you can't have team chemistry unless everyone's either an elite player. He said if you have players who are low level and players who are high level, you never have chemistry with them. And I realized, part of the difference with Nick Saban is that his teams win because he recruits the best players.
Yeah.
And in college football doesn't have the level of parity in the way it's designed. Yeah, college football doesn't have the level of parity by the way it's designed. It has less to do with coaching genius than it has to do with recruiting genius. And there is a genius to recruiting, to identify talent, to be able to recruit them, to convince them to come to your place. But legacy has a lot to do with that. And I had the privilege of listening to Dabo Sweeney in the locker room, and I realized this man is brilliant. Right. I mean, he's just really, really not just a great motivator and an incredible inspirer of men, but really smart. And frankly, I'm just going to be a homie and say Mac Brown is the same kind of person. You have a person who inspires.
He's the coach of University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Just so we're prefacing an asterisk by this statement.
Yeah, and before that, he was at University of Texas, and before that, he was at Chapel Hill.
And they almost
came back home.
And they got scored 65 points on them this weekend.
Well, yeah, but we scored 66, so we just needed one more point to win.
All that matters. All that matters. But
what I'm saying, though, is that I'm not sure why, but in soccer or in football, there is a different level of intellectual and psychological genius that's required for coaching. And I think it's a really amazing thing. Imagine, let's just talk for a minute in terms of like business or church. If you saw your role as a pastor, saw your role as a CEO, as my job is to create a culture where everyone elevates. My job is to create an environment where when people have had a bad week, they believe that next week is going to be better than last week. Your job is literally to keep pulling people up to the best self, and you don't disconnect it. In fact, one of the coaches said something to a player about, hey, if you have any problems, if you have any issues, if you have problems in your marriage, if you have problems with your kids, I want you to come to me. I want you to know I'm available to you, whatever you need. And you see, they don't see people as segmented. They don't go, all I'm responsible for is the athlete in front of me. They go, no, what I'm responsible for is the human being in front of me. And if I can help this guy live an optimal level as a human being, he's going to be able to bring his greatest performance as an athlete. So his life as a husband, his life as a father, his life as a human has everything to do with his performance on the pitch. And I don't know that many people get that. And it's so important.
It's so important. I think one of the moments I really loved about and I get really obsessed with certain things at different seasons of time. There's a book called Hungry with Jeff Gordonier that talks about, it's a New York Times editor, food editor, who follows around the number one chef in the world, Rene Redzepi from Noma in Copenhagen. And he does a biography on him and kind of breaks down his teaming and the way he inspires his team and the way he breaks down his team and the way that they create and innovate. And kind of like these three space, and I feel like this is a similar reaction to like All or Nothing with Man City. With Pep, his entire ideology and having an ideology. I mean, one of the things you said to me about 10 years ago was, you need to come up with a worldview. Like you have to have a way that you see the world. It can be the way someone else sees the world, but you have to decide which way you see the world and how you see it and be able to explain it and talk about it and live your life accordingly to it. And I don't know if I've ever come up with it, but I have different versions of the way I see the world. And what I love about Pep's version of it, the coach, the manager of Man City, is that everything from the medical staff to the coaching staff in every scene, when the medical guy onboards a new player, he goes, hey, anything your wife needs, anything your girlfriend, like anything, like, I don't know, like wife or girlfriend or partner, he asks, like, do you have a partner? He's like, yeah, I have a partner. Okay, anything your partner needs, anything your family needs, anything your kids needs, anything you need in your world medically, just come to me. I can help. And it's like, it's this openness going, okay, there's obviously clear lines of professionalism inside of this organization, but there's also this true care about the people and the lives that they live outside the building when they're inside the building.
Yeah.
There's this camaraderie, there's this elegance, and there's this drive to play the game with beauty, with courage. And I love it when he like goes in and cusses him out. He's like, I want you to play with effing courage, with character. And I'm like, I thought it was really interesting, this kind of use of the word character inside of football, because he's going with this accountability inside of the game to do not just do the basics, but to like expand upon it and innovate the game in a beautiful way.
Yeah, and it's interesting when he goes, it's not about winning or losing. I want to see my team on that pitch. And he's like, I need you to show up. He's absolutely convinced that if they can show up, they will win. He doesn't have to focus on winning. He has to focus on getting them actually present. And a perfect example of this is, since we're both, actually all three of us, I think, really big LAFC fans. And we really come to love MLS. And here you have the Los Angeles Football Club, who has 57 points. They are 9 points ahead to win the Supporters Cup. They're the best team in all of soccer, and they're destroying everyone. And then they trade 9 players and lose the next 3 matches. They lose one of them to basically the worst team in all soccer. And they're getting beat, 3-0, 4-1. I mean, just getting blown out. And 3 games later, there's still 57 points. And as I talked to the leadership there, they were telling me, hey,
you don't have to play that down. You're friends with the president of the organization and the owners. So just keep going.
Yeah. And
subtle flex. It's all good.
They're telling me, hey, it was an emotionally tumultuous transition. The 9 players who left were emotional. They loved, they loved LAFC. The players who remain were best friends with the players who were traded. And it just was really, it rocked the psychological and emotional health of the team. And what's interesting is that we upgraded the team. Even though the 9 players who left were exceptional, we have better players now. We have some of the best players in all of soccer, but talent never supersedes culture. Culture always supersedes talent. And that's why it's always team over talent. And we know they finally won again last night after 4 different matches, but it's taken that long to begin to heal the culture that had been damaged by the loss of the players. And and a lot of people, especially fans, they just go, get this player for this player, get the more talented guy over the less talented guy. And you don't realize a guy who has less talent may create a better culture. And because he creates a better culture, he's better for your team. And when you lose that player who elevates everyone, even though he's not technically the best player in the league, you've really mismanaged your culture because you've had a higher value for talent than culture. And I've seen that throughout history.
It's interesting because we had a guy come and speak at Mosaic this last week named Jamar Brown King. And we've been friends for, I want to say 15 years now.
Yeah.
Jeez, maybe like 20, no, longer. We've been almost friends for like 20 years.
Yeah. Back when you guys used to go to clubs together.
No
fights together.
I knew him. No, he never fought, but I definitely fought. Like, I think I was like 17 when I first met him, or 18. Yeah. Wow. Like 15, 16 years. But he was in town. He moved to Atlanta, him, his wife, and his kid. And he came back and spoke on Labor Day weekend. And it was actually a great turnout. We have this crazy heat wave of like 105 in Los Angeles right now, which makes being outside actually miserable.
Yep.
Actually miserable. It's awful outside. And he spoke, and I had so many friends hit me up the night before being like, hey, is this guy good? Is it, and what they mean by that, is it worth coming to?
Yeah.
And in my head, I find it odd because I'm like, I find that question peculiar and odd and slightly offensive, not to me personally, but I saw this guy like ream me on a comment like a month ago, and then kind of started a downward spiral of my internal mental health and world. And he had said, he's like, I've heard Aaron McManus speak, and I haven't spoken in years. I heard Aaron McManus speak, and he's honestly not very good. So it's ironic that they're all about the art of communication or something like that. And I was like, well, one, F this guy. Like, my immediate head goes like, screw him. Like, what a, blah, 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 bad words. And then I was like, well, yeah, I was pretty trash 8 years ago, probably, when this guy obviously lives in the middle of nowhere now. Like, like when he did a stint in LA, I wasn't very good, for sure. And then it was like, Mosaic Venice, and then so much practice and battle ready. Not that I'm excellent, but I'm better than I was. And I look at like these Man City fans, and they had these like this old crusty old guy that was like, if Man City beats United today and ends their season, this will be the greatest moment of my life. He's like, I have been here when they were terrible. They call it the dark ages. I've been here since the dark ages when they were awful. And I'm like, you know what? I have so much respect for guys like that, because those are the guys who go, yeah, I was here when you were bad, and now that you're great, I get to say I've been a true, like, not even just fan, but like patron, supporter. This is my club. This means everything to me. And I'm like, can we have that ability and loyalty to people as they grow in their success, as they grow in their favors, they grow in the things that they're putting their minds to? Because we live in such a public age now. We live in, and we've talked about this a lot on this podcast, but like, I think it's so important for us. So every time they text me, I go, yeah, of course. You get to be a part of Speaker's journey. But I don't say all this. I say, yes, of course. Of course it's worth it. You should go. And then later I usually explain, like, the reason why I think there's so much unhealth in the world But I think one of the main things is not like we're so willing to see a bad comic because going out and watching comedy is like fun and watching someone bomb is interesting. But we're so reluctant to go somewhere where we're like, the speaking may not be good. It may not be what I want. It may not serve my needs. So I'm not willing to show up for it. But I'm like, that's the thing. Like, I've been a Clippers fan for like 25 years. And I will tell you this, I hate that team and I love that team. If I could divorce being a fan, I would. But I can't. Because I hate the Lakers more. So I think it just, I don't know. I just learned a lot about how to support people in the moments of growth.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that's interesting is you guys live in a really brutal world because
you guys, you live here too.
Yeah, no, the difference is this. Like somebody just sent me a bunch of cassette tapes from my old talks yesterday.
Who?
And I couldn't even open the package, and because it's in a box, and I just couldn't get it jarred open. And it said old tapes from Erwin's messages.
Wait, how long are we talking about?
Maybe 30 years ago.
Wait, from what era? Where were you?
Here in LA when I first came here. But what we don't have is we don't have any of the tapes from when I spoke in the 90s, any of the tapes when I spoke in the 80s. We don't have anything from my early life. And that means that I had fewer haters because if you were listening to me all over the world, you go, yeah, but that guy, when he started, he was trash. And, you know, I mean, I started in a duplex with, 15, 20 people. So I was the best, I was the best speaker they had ever heard because, no one else was competing with going into the ghetto at that time. And the truth is that I was able to hone my skills for a decade without a lot of public criticism. A lot of internal critique, and Kim critiqued me a lot, but not publicly. And one of the reasons I think young preachers today have a high tendency toward becoming performers is that it's easier to get good at being a performer faster. And so you imitate a style, you learn how to perform, you learn how to be a little bit funny, and you use a lot of cliches, and you get a win. I think that the reason you have very few developing communicators who are authentic and transcendent and powerful and are unique to themselves is it's too dangerous to go through the process of becoming that communicator because people will rip you to shreds.
I try not to be a hater because I do like a lot of these people personally. Like I do like a lot of them personally on like a personal level, but it's a circus right now. Like it's a circus.
But I think it's almost like we're doing it to ourselves because young can't survive if they can't survive TikTok, if they can't survive, the critique of the world telling them you shouldn't be on that stage. And it does bother me when people DM me, hey, are you speaking this Sunday? Hey, we're in town. We want to know if you're speaking. I don't respond to those.
God,
I just don't respond to that because I'm going, hey, if I wanted my life to be a life where I was the center stage of a show, I would have gone to make a lot of money in the entertainment field. That's not why I speak on Sunday. And if you're coming on Sunday, you should be coming because it's church. You should be coming to worship and to learn to hear what God is speaking to you. And hey, thank you for listening to me. But on Sunday, come to hear what God is saying, not what I'm saying. And
but also more than that, I think I think it's amazing, but also like be a part of something.
Yeah,
because I think the reality is that like when you say a go easy fan, like you use that language, and I never quite understand what it is, but it is a perfect example. You're like, are you a fan or are you functional? Are you an actual functioning part of the body? And the mechanism, the organism that it is, the church, the community of it. So like, LA, I think more than anywhere, maybe New York, maybe Miami, maybe some big cities. I think every place has this. You come, you don't talk to anyone, and then you leave.
Yeah.
And it's like this deeper bond of, can you build relationships and friendships and accountability and all these things? And or are you just turning up and then disappearing afterwards?
Yeah, I just want to like maybe just throw down for a minute because I went to hear Jamar speak twice yesterday.
Yeah.
I probably know the Bible and better than most of the people who ask the question, "Hey, is this guy worth my time?" If I can go and I can learn, and I can posture my heart to grow from someone who I've mentored most of his adult life,
Yeah.
and if I can go hear him twice and pay attention twice to learn something fresh and new,
Yeah.
the problem is not the speakers. The problem is the listeners. And
Oh.
and I want to create an environment where young comics can learn how to build their chops. I want to create an environment where like young communicators can learn how to be themselves and be cheered on without living in terror that they're going to be absolutely destroyed on through the internet. I want to create a place where people can grow and learn, develop, and we can go, man, I remember when you were not very good. In fact, I remember this security guard came up to me and he said, man, Joe Smith has gotten really good. I remember when he first started speaking, he was really bad, but he's great now. And I thought, this is a paid security guard giving critique on our campus pastor. And he's not a believer, he's not a follower of Jesus, but at least he's been listening all these years, and he could see Joe grow over the years. Yeah. But if we'd not created an environment where you could hear Joe being bad, you're not going to create an environment where Joe gets good.
I mean, it's so true, right? I think Joe's great. Yeah. I think Jamar's great. I think Venice was such a great like example of that, Mosaic Venice, when we had it, and I was such an average communicator, below average communicator, but our team was rock solid. Like I would have taken our team to war. Our team was better than every team in our entire church and most churches, because I think they weren't built around me. They weren't built around a loyalty to greatness. They were built around a community of greatness, right? Of like, we're great together. And I think that brings us back to like the Man City thing of like, they're trying to achieve greatness even when the opponent doesn't show up, even when the opponent is so far greater than them, even when they fail in the challenge, they got to come back and remember that moment where they were great. And I love when Pep talks to them when they lose. Like, I just love that. And I know we've been talking for a while and I want to wrap it up, but like when Pep talks to them and goes, remember, even when the coach was in the press conversation afterwards, he says, we just beat the greatest team in the world. You're still the greatest team in the world, even though you lost. It's okay. And it was just this constant reminder of like, you can achieve greatness even in your bad moments, even those moments where you face challenges. And that's, I don't know, for me, that was like, it's the learning lesson of the era. So maybe Lord of the Rings can still be great, even though it's bad right now.
Wow. That's a way to bring it all the way around.
It is.
And yeah. And I think if you're listening today, maybe one important takeaway is make sure that you do everything humanly possible to get in a culture that lifts you up.
Yeah.
And make sure that you create a culture that lifts people up. And if you're frustrated going, I can't find a place where people are positive and they lift each other up, then maybe that's your new assignment. You create a space where people, when they get around you, start believing that they can be the best in the world.
I mean, that's good. This has been fun. Good to just shoot the conversation with you, have some chats. Austin didn't talk nearly enough, but when we were missing Brooke today, but it's Labor Day, so I'm excited that we at least got this episode in.
Austin, thank you for working on Labor Day. No better way to celebrate Labor Day than doing labor.
Absolutely,
no better way. All right, we are going to do, in addition to this episode, we are going to answer some Q&As, but we're not going to do it connected. We're going to just do it as a standalone thing. So we're going to do that right after. If you haven't listened or watched it yet, get ready. Thank you for listening to this podcast. We are so grateful that you tuned in, that you continue to come back each and every Friday. We love you guys. We're really grateful for you guys. You guys can write and review, write and rate a review. Wait, you can rate us and write. It's been a while since I've done this. You can rate and review us on Spotify and Apple Music. So if you don't mind going there, take a second, review us. I would love to break 1,000 reviews on iTunes this week. That'd be amazing. We're so close. So if you've listened to us for a long time and you're like, how can I contribute? go rate and review us, give us 5 stars, and then you can do it on Spotify as well. I'm really grateful for this podcast. I know we all are, Dad, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next week.
All right.
All right.
Have a great week.
All right, bye.